But what's interesting about Abraham, I believe, is that God's expectation or provision will exceed your expectations. I think that's shown. But it takes us a second to get to it. I think it's shown. So if you go to verses 13 and 14, you see this marker that's made. So Abraham's hand has been stayed. Don't kill the boy. I see that you fear God. Verse 13, Abraham looked up. There in the thicket he saw a ram caught by the horns. He went over, took the ram, and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, "The Lord will provide," and to this day it is said, "On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." Now, how does that actually highlight expectations being exceeded, we might wonder? Well, let's turn to the New Testament for a moment. And the words will come up on the screen from Mark 8, 31 through 32. Peter, the Apostle Peter, has just made the confession, "You're the Christ. You're the Messiah. You're the one we've been waiting for all this time." And Jesus says the most unexpected words to Peter, who just made this confession. In chapter 8, verses 31 and 32, Jesus then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and teachers of the law, and that he must be killed, and after 3 days rise again. And that's when Peter takes him out and rebukes him. No, this isn't supposed to happen. You're the long-awaited Messiah. We've been waiting for you for all this time. You're the guy that's supposed to restore the temple and take away our oppressors, free us as a people. You're not supposed to be killed by those people and be dead for 3 days. That's not supposed to happen. That's not how this works. Unexpected twist, and the disciples are rattled by this. But that's what Jesus says is going to happen. Now, move back to the other text for a moment. "Take your son," Abraham is told, "and go to Mount Moriah." Moriah, Yaira, play on words again. But on Mount Moriah, in 2 Chronicles 3, we discover that's where the temple is built. That's where the sacrifices are made, over and over, year after year, to atone for sin. A substitution is made. If any of you have been reading this book, and there's still some free copies for anybody that wants them, Names of God, it gives you much more detail than I do on all these names by Stone, Nathan Stone. He says it well. He says, on Mount Moriah, Jehovah was teaching Abraham that he himself was prepared to provide. He was teaching the awful cost to himself of the provision of the sacrifice for sin. This is still Stone. He said, "Does it break your heart, Abraham, to give up, to slay, yes, by your own hand, as an innocent sacrifice, your well-beloved and only son?" Another New Testament verse to highlight this is 1 Peter 3, 17 and 18. Peter writes, "For it is better, if it is God's will, to suffer for doing good than for doing evil. For Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous." That's you for me, by the way. The righteous for the unrighteous, to bring you to God. "He was put to death in the body, but made alive in the spirit." Generations told of Abraham and Isaac, of how God provided a substitution, someone to be sacrificed in place of Isaac. Generations then went to Mount Moriah, and they took their offering to the temple to be sacrificed in their place, so that their firstborn wouldn't be taken out each year, so that they would be atoned for their sin. Every year they took seriously the fact that God is holy and sin is awful. That walking with God requires walking in holiness, and sin messes that up, and in order to take care of that, it's costly to fix that problem. Every year they did that over and over. Through Abraham and Isaac, God showed the plan and God showed the price. God was doing something bigger than Abraham ever expected out of that moment. Through the sacrifice that we have through Jesus Christ, we become a new creation. We become something new. We can then be grace in a graceless world. We can then be love in a culture just of tolerance and conditionality. We can be mercy in a world that's cutthroat, that's full of ankle biters and lacks empathy. We can be hope-filled above our circumstances because of what Jesus did in our place. The righteous for the unrighteous. That we could walk with God. You imagine the emotions of Abraham and Isaac. What did they go through? Abraham, knowing the whole while that he's got to sacrifice his son, even if it can be raised from the dead, for goodness sakes, that's hard. And they walk up the hill, and then Isaac realizes, oh, wait, I know what this means now. He's old enough to know. Imagine the emotion and the toll that took on them. And now imagine Palm Sunday and God sending his only son down the last walk as people praise to the side, not realizing what's coming up. God giving his only son, the righteous for the unrighteous. How much sin cost and how much God is willing to go through to provide the lamb that we needed.